The year 2024 has been a really fast year, and we are already almost to Halloween. October is one of my favorite months of the entire year. It's a good time to start watching some horror movies, the weather is getting a little bit cooler, it's not so freaking hot anymore, and of course, it's a good time to play some spooky themed video games. Every October, I like to pick a few games to play through that are October or Halloween themed, and save them for that time because it just feels more special to play them that way. Since I've been a YouTube content creator for coming close to a year now, I figured for this channel, we'll do something special for October. I sat down and went through all of the PS1 games that we ever got that were somewhat spooky, October kind of themed, and I found 8 games that I definitely want to talk about that people should definitely check out, and some of these you'll definitely know, but there might be some that you've never heard of, so if you haven't, well, you'll learn something new today. I know survival horror is an easy candidate to put for a list like this, so I'm actually going to exclude Resident Evil and Silent Hill. To be fair, I don't think these are really October-themed games, they're just horror-themed games. You can play a horror game anytime. These games are definitely games you would play in the month of October, which contains spooky theme elements or are Halloween themed in general. Without further ado, I want to go over these games and we'll talk about the 8 spooky games that you should definitely play on the PlayStation 1. Number 1. This game is definitely obviously chosen because if I didn't choose this game, I would have a mob in front of my doorstep right now. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is easily a top 10 game for the console. It's one of the best games ever made, seriously. Castlevania in general is just a good franchise to play in the month of October, but I mean hell, it's such a good franchise, it's fun to play at any time. In this game though, you play as Alucard, which is Dracula's son, but it actually starts off from the previous game, Rondo of Blood, which we never got originally, until several years later. This game is super iconic for establishing the Metroidvania genre with the help of Super Metroid 2, and this game is just a total blast. You start off with a bunch of cool stuff, you infiltrate the castle, and then Grim Reaper here, he takes all your items away, and you pretty much have nothing but a sword. You gotta go through Dracula's castle, get all your stuff back, find newer weapons and such, and take out Dracula himself so he doesn't rule the world. This game is a total blast though, and if you like platform video games or, non-linear games in general, Metroidvanias, well, you need to play Symphony of the Night if you haven't. This is a bucket list video game for sure, and it's also a fantastic game to play for October. Number 2. Medieval is definitely a no-brainer, and probably people thinking it would be on this list anyway. I mean, this game came out October 21st of 1998 in North America. This game screams Halloween. Medieval is definitely a classic and a very fun action-adventure hack-and-slash kind of game overall. You go through very spooky terrains like cemeteries, mausoleums, and even pumpkin patches. You play as an undead soldier, Sir Daniel Fortescue, and basically you come back to life as a skeleton. You gotta take down this evil guy named Zarok and stop his reign of terror and save the world pretty much. This game was remade back in 2019, and it is a good game, and I would say probably just for the convenience, it might be the best way to go, but the classic Medieval I think does play a little bit better, so either way you go, you'll have a fun time playing Medieval in the month of October. Number 3. I did want to put a survival horror game on this list, and I thought Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare was a great candidate because this game literally takes place on October 31st. If you've played a lot of survival horror games from this generation, you'll be right at home with this one. This one pretty much just plays a lot like Resident Evil, with some differences. You play as this guy named Edward Carnby, or you can actually play as a line, so you have 2 characters that you can pick from the start. There's a murder on this island near Massachusetts, and you go to see what's going on. It's rainy, and it's very dark, and you just kind of see some weird stuff happening whenever you get there. This game doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything in this genre, but it's a pretty cool experience to play. It's got all the spooky elements you would want in a survival horror game. You pick items up, and you get guns, and use a flashlight, so it's definitely a lot of fun, and a cool game to play at really any time of the year, but I mean, you know, October, of course. With that being said, though, this game is also on the Sega Dreamcast, so that actually might be the best way to play this game, but because I'm a PS1 guy, I had to recommend this one because I still think it's worth playing even on this system. Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare. You love Resident Evil, survival horror games in general? Definitely check this one out. This one's kind of cool. Number 4. Capcom fighting games are always pretty good, and Darkstalkers: The Night Warriors is a fantastic game. Originally an arcade game in 1994, it was ported to the PS1 back in the long box days in 96. You have a lot of different characters in this game, a lot of horror fiction type of theme here going on. You got Morgan, who's one of the main characters. She's like a succubus kind of demon chick. And then you also have Dimitri, he's a vampire. But you've got a lot of different characters here, and they're all pretty fun. Once you learn how to do the combos and such, it can be a blast to play this game. Not to mention, this game graphically is just freaking gorgeous, man. Like, the pixel art and everything is just fantastic. It's like a Super Nintendo if it had steroids involved. People definitely know about this game, especially huge fighting game fans from the 90s, so if you're tired of your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, or even your Marvel vs. Capcom, and you want something a little bit more horror themed, I definitely think that Darkstalkers: The Night Warriors is pretty good, or any of the sequels too. Can't go wrong with this series. Number 5. Swagman, which sounds like an Old Spice ripoff to be quite honest with you, is an action-adventure game developed by Core Design and released in '97. This game really took me by surprise though, because I didn't even know this game existed until recently. You play as these kids though, and it's definitely like a spooky kind of theme here going on, and you're in like this house, and it comes out like a top-down action-adventure style game. You gotta get keys to solve puzzles and such like that, to go to doors you can't go through, and you can attack enemies as well. It feels a little bit like stuff like The Legend of Zelda or Zombies Ate My Neighbors, and it's a pretty fun game, honestly. I'm not even a big Core Design fan, because I just think the Tomb Raiders personally have not really aged that well, but I was very surprised to see a game like this developed by them. This one's for sure is stuck in its console generation. It's like a $40 game roughly on the PS1. It is on the Sega Saturn, but only Europe got that game. Not sure why they didn't do that from North America, but the Saturn was not selling well in general. Swagman definitely has promise, so if you like action-adventure top-down kind of games that are retro-styled, I'd definitely give this one a look. I heard this is a hidden gem, so it definitely has promise. Number 6. D is an interactive movie adventure game that came out back in the old days of the PS1 in '96, and it was developed by Warp and published by Acclaim. This game was actually on the Panasonic 3DO, which was a console before this era, so pretty cool that that existed. You play as this girl, and your dad is on a mass murdering spree in this hospital. He's a doctor, and you go in there, and the whole place turns to a castle. D's big focus for sure is definitely big on the full motion video here, and for the most part, it's pretty much like a survival horror game, but a very on rails kind of game. You don't get to move around like you normally would in a regular game. It's a very, strict kind of game of how it is. You can go left, you can go up, right, or whatever, and you find clues and such through this castle. This game for sure has shown its age, especially with all the full motion video going on here, but I do find it quite interesting how this game played. This game definitely has fun to be had. I did kind of like it when I was playing this game, and it's only about like an hour and a half long kind of game, based on, being full motion video the whole way through. If you got a couple hours to kill though, I definitely would play this one maybe on an evening sometime, and definitely a horror themed game to play in October as well. D is one I would definitely check out if you're interested. Number 7. Crypt Killer is a rail shooter made by Konami that came out in '97 for the PS1. Obviously, this is definitely an arcade game. It came out in '95. They decided to port it to the PS1, and honestly, the game is quite fun. This game, though, it's not very revolutionary in any way. I mean, pretty much is a House of the Dead clone through and through. You can do different paths and take different paths in the level, but that's about really it. You still reload. It's just a classic old railgun shooter, killing a bunch of ghouls, skeletons, and such like that. This game, no doubt, though, would be super fun to play with the Gun-Con on original hardware, on a CRT, but if you don't, well, you gotta use the D-pad or control stick. The game's pretty cool. Like I said, it doesn't reinvent the wheel or anything, but sometimes it's just fun to play a rail shooter that you're familiar with another game. So, Crypt Killer is definitely one I would check out if you like rail shooters.
Look right!
Number 8. Koudelka is definitely a game I've had my eye on for several years, and I finally decided to give the game a try. I think this game is definitely known for its value more than its game. This is one of the most expensive PS1 games, and yeah, it's a lot of money. The game itself, it definitely is spooky themed for sure, but it's technically a role-playing game. It looks like Resident Evil on the surface, but when you play the game, it's actually turn-based combat with a grid system. It's pretty cool. It reminds me of games like Live Alive, kinda, how it plays. And you play as Koudelka, that's the chick's name, and there's another guy you find along the way. And the combat's really cool. I actually did dig this game. The random encounters are a little excessive, but I mean, there's a lot of games that have that problem, so it is what it is, but Koudelka definitely has something going for it. The voice acting's not terrible either for a game like this, and also just the setting in general. I really love this kind of game. If you like role-playing games and you haven't played enough on the PS1 yet, well, definitely check out Koudelka, because this one for sure is interesting enough to definitely give a try, which if you don't purchase this game, I definitely don't blame you, but of course, you'll have to play this any way you possibly can. And there you have it. Those are 8 spooky themed PS1 games that you should definitely check out if you've not gotten the chance to. Spooky video games are always a fun time to play in October, of course, but you can play them at any time, it doesn't even matter. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to make a list video during October that included October Halloween themed games, and there's probably some that I definitely missed, and if there's some that you definitely recommend, well, definitely leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about your suggestions. If I had to pick one game on this list that you definitely should play, it's Symphony of the Night. It's a Metroidvania, it's one of the classic games on the PS1, and you can play it on new hardware, so definitely one you should check out. But all the other games are also pretty good. I usually try to count games that are all different from each other, so you can't go wrong with any game on this list. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this kind of content, be sure to give it a like. You got something to say? Leave a comment down below. And of course, if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy.